Welcome back into the film room. I'm your host, Erik Turner. Another week, another brief film session here at Cover One, and I'm joined again by my man, Anthony Prohasker from Disguise Coverage. Anthony, what's going on, brother?
We're starting to get close to real off-season stuff. We've been in like wading into the water a little bit the last couple of weeks, and now the combine is here this week. Free agency officially starts in 2 weeks. We have the draft at the end of next month because we're already in March, and things have come out about previous draft classes and people that the Bills have brought in, which inspired this episode. And I changed my tree in the back to be St. Patrick's Day themed. So
So
I'm
it
very
kind of
excited for
passes
that.
now.
Yep, it always passes. It's always thematically decorated. How dare you? But yeah, I'm excited and happy to be back.
It's funny, on one of the videos the other night, someone made a comment. I perused the comments, and someone said, I was dying when Anthony mentioned his tree again in the background. I'm like, that's his go-to. Like, he's got to. Either it's a comment from the chat room or it's a comment from Anthony, right?
Everyone always questions it. They're always like, bro, but why has he got a tree? And I'm like, are you new here? Do you not get it?
Welcome here.
Yeah, welcome.
Kendall, awesome background, man. Welcome back into the film room, brother.
Yeah, finally got the background up. Yeah, it's nice to be back in the film room. Nice to get closer to draft season. I was so excited. Like, I knew that the combine was starting. I hopped into NFL Network and I was like, it hasn't started yet. They're just talking to personnel people. I was like so excited to start watching drills, and it's like it's not quite there yet, but we're almost there. We're almost there. And it's so weird. I talked about this last night. It's so weird because we just have to keep flip-flopping from draft to free agency like this entire offseason. Because it's like, oh, the draft isn't really here yet, so let's talk about free agency. Then the combine starts, and you're like, yo, we're heavy into the draft. And then the combine's gone. And then you're like, oh, free agency is starting right now. And then you're back into the draft. It's such a flip-floppy nature of the offseason, but I'm here for it. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, that's what's interesting about having a good team now. Your team's not done. They're playing into the playoffs. Yeah. And, like for me, I started my scouting a little later than usual. So it's a different time of the year. And as you said, we're going to be flipping back and forth between free agency, combine, and the draft overall in the next few weeks. But I wanted to change it up. As I was talking with Anthony prior to the show, after, trying to cram all these prospects and watch all this film, and, your eyes start to bug out after a while and you kind of have to take a step back, a little reset. And I thought that a tweet from Field Yates kind of was a good way to approach this episode and talk about, something different. And it's kind of evaluating the 2018 draft class. And as one of the comments says here, Christy says, he says, you always have such good video ideas, and we can't take credit for it. What we're going to talk about tonight is that draft class of 2018, and it was inspired by this tweet from Field Yates, and it said the first 6 picks by the Bills in 2018. Josh Allen, 6 years, $258 million extension, franchise quarterback, obviously. They got that done. Linebacker Tremaine Edmunds, hot topic, 2 Pro Bowls under his belt, very productive career, but his contract, his future with the Bills hangs in the balance. Defensive tackle Harrison Phillips, 107 tackles in his career. Obviously a guy that has had some injury issues, some availability issues, but when he's been healthy, especially this year, the back half of this year, man, he put together a really nice season in his contract season. Cornerback Taron Johnson, 3 years, $24 million extension. A guy that's come a long way from his time at Weber State. Siran Neal, special teams ace, a guy that's filled in at corner, safety, slot, big nickel. I mean, any type of role player, role name, he's probably had it. And he was just extended for 3 years, $10.9 million. And then, of course, the one that got away, the one that was traded away, Wyatt Teller, guard, traded to the Browns, all pro. I mean, you can't say he's honestly one of the top 5 guards in the league, to put it plain and simple. So, yes, this is what we're going to be talking about tonight. This draft class, and as we were talking about offline, it's something that we should probably be doing more now that we have a few years of this regime, Brandon Beane being the general manager, and looking back at the draft classes and how they unfolded, how the players have developed, and, some of the in-depth film stuff, but also some of the advanced metrics and things that we love to talk about here in the film room. So I'll start with you, Kendall. What were your thoughts on that tweet and this idea, man? Again, something different, not just free agency, not just draft.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a great idea to go back to it because, I mean, it is right around that time where you can start evaluating draft classes, especially for 2018. Like, we could probably do it for 2019, but you'd be jumping the gun just a little bit because you don't want to make any like rash statements about anyone's potential or where they're at currently in their development before you kind of see the fruits of that labor. And I think 2018 is the perfect, I mean, we can definitely do it with 2017, but I think 2018 is that perfect cross section of they've had enough time in this league where we should be able to say what they are and what they possibly could be and look back on how Beane did value wise in the draft with finding these guys.
Yeah, and scouting reports, when these scouts, college scouts, are doing the reports for Brandon Beane, usually you're asked, hey, give me a 3-year projection, give me a 5-year projection or more. And so this, again, with all of the news coming up with the extensions and possible extensions on the horizon, I thought this was a great idea and something that, Anthony, I mean, we could really break down each of these guys on their own in their own film rooms, couldn't we?
Yeah, they've had a pretty good track record, they being like Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, in terms of who they've drafted overall. Obviously you're going to have some misses, but I think they've hit more than they've missed in both the draft and free agency. And this, episode kind of blends those two ideas, guys that they've drafted, but some are free agents now, so we don't have to do that wishy-washy thing. And yeah, as several people have already commented, like to hit on your first 6 picks. Yeah, as Jason said there, I actually wonder how many times the first 6 picks of any team's draft are all players who get a second multi-year contract, presuming a couple of those players sign somewhere at least. Yeah, like whether you want to, talk about Wyatt Teller as a miss, whatever have you, he turned into an all-pro guard. A lot of that has to do with Bill Callahan and the coaching that he got over there in Cleveland, but it's a successful track record in this 2018 draft, and really the first official one, quote unquote, for Brandon Beane after he came in right after the 2017 draft. But yeah, you get your cornerstone in your quarterback, you get quality defensive players, and you get a quality special teamer and guys that you ideally are going to be re-upping for a second contract and are going to be keeping and maintaining that kind of core. It's honestly a very impressive thing, and that's how you stay good in football, in any sport, being sustainable through your draft and getting that functional quality play on a controlled contract and being able to continue to replenish that pipeline. It's one of the things that's been Beane's calling card so far. And, this one was a real standout class and, a good topic for this film.
Yeah, and so as Anthony, talked about, Beane was technically hired on May 9th of 2017. And, there's a lot of conspiracy theories that, he had some type of hand in the into the draft, that 2017-2018 draft. And I do believe, and I'm sure a lot of you guys kind of agree that, it's hard not to believe that he, being close with McDermott, even being in the front office of the Panthers, that there was some type of communication or, hey, these are my blue chip players, my blue dot guys, where these are the type of guys, the DNA that we need to lay that foundation for. And obviously, as you saw, they laid a pretty good foundation in this draft when with Beane. So some of the transactions, like soon after being hired, in 8/28, on 8/28, they acquired a 4th-round pick for Reggie Ragland, trade with the Chiefs. And then 2018, so the offseason of, going into Beane's first season was on March 1st, they signed Star Lotulelei, which he's still with the Bills. Obviously, his status is still up in the air. They signed A.J. McCarron, Trent Murphy, obviously was a hot topic for a few years there. They traded Tyrod Taylor to the Browns in exchange for a third round draft choice. In the draft, once they got to the draft time, they traded Cordy Glenn, kind of swapped picks and picked up a 5th rounder as well. That's when they flipped A.J. McCarron on 9/1, September 1st, to the Raiders for a 5th round pick. That's one thing with Beane.
For a 5th.
That's the one thing. Like he would take these bum offensive linemen or bum quarterbacks for that matter. I'm not saying Tyrod's a bum, but A.J. McCarron was kind of a bum. And was getting picks for these guys. Like, that's what was so exciting about Beane. He made, he didn't just make trades, but he sacrificed some things early on in his career. He talked about it today, trading away, like Watkins and whatnot, the Darbys of the world. to acquire the picks for this 2018 draft, right, Kendall?
Yeah, he's done so much moving and shaking to really make this roster what he wants to make it and clean up all the cap space that he did when he got into town, and then really build it from the ground up in terms of the kind of guys that he wants to have, the DNA. Like, McDermott talked about Davis, that DNA to work and build that culture from within, from the locker room out. And it's really just been an amazing job. I'm currently going down the rabbit hole to see what he tried or what he got out of that 4th round pick from Reggie Ragland. I can't find it yet, but there's later on, I'll be able to allude to some of the picks that the Bills have gotten and the players they've gotten out of those picks that he's gotten from the trade. So I'll get back to you on the Reggie Ragland front, but I'll find it eventually.
Yeah, I mean, let's get into this draft class. Let's get started with this because it's going to be quite lengthy. I'm going to start off with their 7th round pick, who wasn't on that list from Field Yates. Austin Proehl, wide receiver. When he was brought on board, he was a guy that had connections to, Beane and McDermott and his dad being a wide receiver in the league. And I'm sure there was some nepotism there, but Proehl was, a practice squad player that probably played a really important role for the Bills defense more than anything, that shifty slot receiver type. But he actually just signed, if I remember correctly, with the Giants, right? Joe Shine brought him over to New York just, I want to say like a week or two ago.
His dad was sweet. That's like the biggest thing that always sticks with me. That like his dad, Ricky Proehl's catch against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with the Rams in the NFC Championship. That tightrope catch in the side of the end zone that basically sent them to the Super Bowl ahead of the Buccaneers. His dad was sweet. So I had a lot I love these like random like late signings or undrafted free agents, and especially if they have like a lineage. I'm like, oh man, like this guy could be sweet, and trying to find a way. Like I did the same thing with Elijah Griffin last year. I was like, yo, his dad is like a regulator. Like this is going to be sick.
It was like your day when he like retweeted it too, right?
I did like a regulator remix of the lyrics. He retweeted it and then he followed me on Twitter. It was like the coolest day of my life. But yeah, you get like those dudes that just, and they're trying to make it in this league. They're just trying to hang their hat on something. And, whether it was that connection that got Austin Proehl in the door or his actual play, like you mentioned, like he provided a service for the Buffalo Bills early on. And the fact that he's still, I don't care if he's a practice squad guy or not, the fact that he's still alive and kicking in the NFL.
It's impressive.
Like, it is impressive. Yeah. Like they can find practice squad players almost like a dime a dozen. The fact that he's still on a roster, he's still getting burned. He's still getting looks. Again, he's not an all-pro. He's not a stud, but it speaks to his ability of the game. And more importantly, I think his understanding and his, work ethic, which again falls in line with so many of the draft picks we see made by Brandon Beane, like their mental ability in terms of how they see and understand the game, but also how they work towards the game, their culture fit. They're always a good culture fit wherever they go, and they work hard and they understand what their role is.
Yeah, that mentality goes a long way. He's, regardless of, whether he's elevated to the 53-man roster or not, he's a professional. In some manner, he's a professional, and he helps professionals that dress every Sunday, and he had for the Bills for a little while there. So let's get into the 5th round pick. Again, the one that was traded away, and sometimes, obviously they liked him, and, we all loved his film coming out of college. About Tech, he was, I remember just playing music, let the bodies hit the floor, because he was pancaking dudes left and right. Yeah. He had that nasty mentality. Wyatt Teller, obviously a guy that was a good player. He had a lot of potential and promise, but it seemed just like timing wise with, how some things were shaping up in the offensive line room, they decided to kind of ship him off to the Browns. So why don't you talk about Wyatt Teller and his career so far?
Yeah, he's just been outstanding. Like Ant said, really, a lot of it could go to Bill Callahan and his coaching. But like you said, Erik, it could have gone right here. But the way just kind of the arc of how this team was being built, it almost seemed like the Bills didn't really want to rely on someone young on the offensive line. They wanted to get some experience there. And for whatever reason, that was the decision, and it drove them away from Wyatt Teller. It's unfortunate, but what I keep coming back to is the fact that this ball of clay, this dude with good tape unrefined, good tape offensive lineman, the Bills still got some picks back for him. And this isn't someone, what did the Bills traded a 7th round pick and him. They got a 5th and a 6th back. And you think about where he was taken in the 6th round, right? Or the 5th round, I think. Yeah, so he was taken in the 5th round, and the Bills get a 5th and a 6th back because they gave a future 7th on top of who he was. That's some pretty good draft capital back from someone that's unproven. He's literally just a ball of clay, and you're shipping him off just to hopefully be coached up. And obviously he did. He turned into top 5 guard in the league. Yeah. But when you look back at those picks that the Bills got from him, those picks were partly, the 5th round pick was used to trade to the Vikings to get Stephon Diggs. So without that pick, we wouldn't have had as much ammunition to go get Stephon Diggs. So this has to be part of the evaluation. And then furthermore, the 6th round pick, the 2026 round pick, turns into Tyler Bass. So we can't forget about, you can't forget about what these trades get turned into, because yes, probably was the wrong decision to trade Teller, but he's still making up for that mistake with drafting well, making more correct picks than wrong picks. And I think that's where some of this gets lost in translation when you think about Wyatt Teller, what could have been in Buffalo. You go, oh my God, we just missed out on a guard. We need help at guard. But think about the areas of the roster that are better because of that. So it's always a little cost benefit analysis. And I think it's very clear to say that there was a cost there. There was not as much benefit, but there was still some benefit squeezed out of that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, like you said, at the time, there weren't many guys that Jason brought up in the chat room. There weren't many people saying, oh man, like that was a bad move. I mean, most of us were pleasantly surprised for what they got for a player so early.
Everybody was throwing him in with like this is another Marshall Newhouse, AJ McCarron level. Look, what we just got 2 picks for some dude that we don't care about. Awesome. But now everybody wants to operate with the hindsight. Like, oh my God, what a terrible move. Nobody was banging the drum for that when it happened.
Right. And again, I think a lot of that had to do with timing. I know there were some rumblings that he was struggling picking up the playbook. And again, maybe that was the case just because he was early on in his career, not necessarily the type of player he was, but just the complex playbook that the Bills were running at that time. Maybe that had something to do with it. But obviously he went on and has gone on to become one of the better players at his position. And I'm pretty sure he got extended this past year too, right?
I think
so. This past year during the season or before it started.
Right. He deserves it. Either way, in hindsight, yes, it sucks to let a guy like that go, but there was some good return on that, as Kendall talked about there. So let's move on to Taron Johnson, one of our favorites, a 4th round pick of the Bills. And I said he's come a long way. Obviously he played at Weber State, and a majority of those snaps were on the outside, and he had never played slot corner. So when the Bills drafted him, I was very weary about this, especially drafting him in that 4th round, having not played the slot position. But one of the traits that really stood out on film across the board and has to for corners in the Bills scheme is that tackling. And that has always been the case for Taron Johnson, even at that level of competition in school at Weber State. And the other thing, going back and researching it, he talked about playing a lot of man-to-man concepts when in college on the outside, which was surprising to go back and look at, considering the Bills and their zone-heavy scheme. But if there's one thing for you, Anthony, that stands out with Taron Johnson, what would it be? Maybe not just from like his development, but just something that has always been there for him.
Oh, easy. How he fits the run and how he comes forward. His availability was somewhat in doubt early in his career because of how aggressive he is coming forward with like your proverbial like reckless abandon. He's just flinging his body into blockers, into ball carriers, like anything. He will do anything to make a play. And you combine that with his ability to fit the run, which for me, like, and I'm a coverage guy, like I'm a secondary guy. The coverage piece is tremendously important, but his ability to fit the run is so important for this defense. The Bills are in nickel. I don't even have to look up these numbers because I've said it to people so many times on Twitter in regards to Tremaine Edmunds and wanting a 2-gapping defensive tackle. The Bills are in nickel 69% of the time in 2021, second most in the league. That's been pretty much par for the course these last several years. They're always somewhere around 70%. They're in the top 3 for nickel percentage. They had light boxes 51% of the time in 2021. They had 7-man boxes 30% of the time in 2021. So the majority of the time they have light boxes in terms of number, but also light in terms of weight. They are not a heavy defensive line. Combined with the fact that they're going nickel, Taron Johnson has to wear that linebacker hat. It's like an inside joke that we all like to make, but he has to fit the run like he's that third linebacker. He has to spill. He has to be the force player. He has to come up and make tackles. He has to read and function within gap exchanges and come up and make plays around the line. And then you combine that with what he does in coverage, which, you know, he's made a lot of progress in that area as well. But for me, it's the plays around the line of scrimmage. He's a dog around the line. His ability to fit the run. Honestly, like I know how great Kenny Moore is out there in Indianapolis. I don't know if there's a better nickel corner or slot corner fitting the run than Taron Johnson. I'm not saying he's the best nickel in the league, but in terms of fitting the run and functioning as almost like a quasi linebacker, we have all these quasi guys on the Bills. I don't know if anybody comes forward and fits the run like Taron Johnson.
Erik says, who would have thought the guy who took a ball to the head in the gauntlet drill ends up one of the top nickel corners?
I remember.
Yeah.
Poor dude.
That was one of those moments that he definitely wanted to forget. You're right, man. He's like their third linebacker on the field. And when we talk about run stops, according to Pro Football Focus, listen to this. 2021, he had 14 run stops, which was third in the league. His run stop percentage of 4.4 was ranked fourth. Last season, he had 21 stops against the run, which was first overall, and his run stop percentage was 6.5, and that was first. So, yes, the last couple of years, when healthy, he has been a dog, and he's a lot of times having to make these fits as that outside of the box player, the guy, you know, detached from the box, that seventh defender coming from depth, coming from width, coming downhill and making a tackle on a running back that is already getting downhill at full speed. He comes in there, as we talk about, you know, with that dog mentality, with that reckless abandon early on. But that's one thing with him. When he started having issues with being available, he had to change up his entire tackling approach and fitting up these runs and those running backs. And, you know, it's really showed out the last couple of years. Yes, he's, you know, again, coming from that depth and that width, you're going to have times where you're going to miss tackles, especially given his lack of size. But you can't teach that mentality that Anthony talked about. But one thing that really kind of goes by the wayside, Kendall, is him in coverage, but mainly prior to the snap. You know, we always talk about Hyde and Poyer disguising coverages, but more times than not, Taron Johnson is tied into that.
Yeah.
And, you know, how he aligns over that slot wide receiver, whether he's up, where his eyes are, his posture, if he's off, a lot of that plays into how they disguise a coverage on the back end.
Yeah, he's so big in terms of pre-snap communication, like relaying messages from the safeties to his outside corners. And furthermore, like you just said, he's part of disguising coverages. There's so many, this guy over here. There's so many times. I was really shocked to see it this year that Taron Johnson was dropping into a deep half. Like that's part of what they did. Like they rotated the safeties and kind of rotated either Poyer or Hyde down, which means Taron has to come up on the other side. And that's how you get your too high shell at the end of the day. It's not what it looked like pre-snap, but it's what it looked like post-snap. So he's a big part of like relaying the communication chain of what's going on in the secondary in coverage, pre-snap and honestly post-snap. I found that he's actually really quite sound at passing over those crossers and playing sound in that regard to what the Bills want from that secondary. So it's not just the physical traits and the mentality of how to fit the run, but there are so many areas that he's grown in coverage.
Yeah, and I pulled a few clips, a little montage of what we're talking about when it comes to disguising coverages pre and post snap. So take a listen.
Taron Johnson, a little bit
is a dog. I mean, he's a dog, and pound for pound, just the best nickel in the league. Dude just comes to work every single day, just believing that he's the best. And I mean, he went out there, and to me, it was amazing watching him play today. You ain't even got to finish your sentence, but just the way he played today was incredible. It's incredible.
See what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to be inside leverage. And obviously, I want to be connected if he goes inside. Let's start over here, over two. His favorite target, it's Andrews to my left. I drop back right before the ball is snapped. I see Lamar's eyes. Honestly, I didn't think he was going to throw it, but he threw it, and I just stepped in front of it, probably right about here. I thought for a split second to take a knee. Then I looked up, and it was just green grass on this side, and decided to take off.
2 yards deep in the end zone, intercepted by Taron Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that was one of the most memorable moments in that Ravens game, for the franchise overall, and Taron Johnson holds that moment. You heard one of the clips there, the second clip, talking about, you saw Taron Johnson talking with Hyde and Poyer about being connected if he goes inside. Like, that is what showed out in that Ravens clip there. He showed man initially, and you heard Frazier talk about it in one of the press conferences. He disguised it prior to the snap and then dropped off into zone coverage. Jackson probably thought it was man coverage, stayed to the front side tracking Andrews, and didn't see Taron Johnson dropping out underneath. I mean, he's just so important to the Bills defense, and part of the reason why the Bills are so comfortable remaining in nickel so often, right? Right, Anthony, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, for sure. You have to be able to wear multiple hats if you're going to function in today's NFL in a nickel defense like that, which is why, all jokes aside, Matt Milano is so important. Tremaine Edmunds, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, like, they're able to do multiple things. They can function in, we talk about Hyde and Poyer all the time, their ability to both be a free and strong safety. There's no individual designation or distinction. They're basically just two safeties. That's it. And Taron Johnson falls into that mold. What he can do in coverage, what he can do as far as the run game, functioning in coverage like a nickel or a regular corner, being able to come forward like a linebacker, being able to wear those multiple hats. And I love the clip that you pulled, because his intelligence, I think, is something that doesn't get spoken about. I don't think a lot of player intelligence really gets talked about unless there's like something, right in front of your face that clicks. But I remember when Josh Allen had his pro day, and he got asked a question after about like a random play from his Wyoming season. And his recall was like, oh yeah, the safety came over the top and this happened and I read this and blah, blah, blah. And everybody was talking about how impressive it was. And maybe Taron Johnson prepped for that question there. But his recall of knowing, like, yeah, here's where I was aligned. This is what I thought Lamar was going to do. Here's where I dropped. This is what I did. He has a really high IQ. And his functional intelligence is also a huge piece of what allows him to be so multiple and be so versatile. And it's a really fun thing to watch when we study film, because you see like how much of a chatty Cathy he is on the back end. Like, he's one of the leaders talking with Hyde and Poyer, with Tremaine, with Milano, with Tre'Davious White. Like, they're all talking and communicating. And sometimes he's leading a lot of that because of where he is, being in kind of the epicenter of all the action, being that nickel corner. He's close to the line, but he's also got to wear that coverage role at the same time. So his ability to be able to distinguish what's going on and decipher what's happening in front of him, then relay that message, connect it all together with what he's being told. It's honestly a hugely important piece for this defense, and another reason why his extension that he signed in October was such a huge piece for this defense, because he's a core member of this defense. There is no like, oh, well, he's a nickel guy, so he's a starter. He's a starter. In today's NFL, a lot of teams run nickel, especially this Bills team, and he's a huge piece of their success.
Yeah, and you're right, man. When there's a stacked wide receiver look or a trips bunch set, it's you watch Taron Johnson prior to snap. He's giving the call. He's in command of that coverage. He's the one responsible for calling the adjustment on those specific type of formations. Again, like stack sets or trips bunch sets. He's responsible for that. That's a very, very good point. And overall, just a really good player, kind of the mentality. You heard the high praise that Poyer and Hyde gave him in that clip from Matt Bove. Just a fun player to watch on film, a fun player that we've watched develop over the years. And of course, a centerpiece when you talk about the Bills' base defense being nickel. So with that said, let's move on to one of the, more boring players on this team. Nah. Josh Allen. Let's get to Josh Allen, because I have a feeling that Anthony prepped a lot of good stuff for us when it comes to Josh Allen, the Bills franchise quarterback.
There's such a nice, calming feeling and presence knowing that, knock on wood, because I'm always going to be paranoid, that the Bills have not only their franchise, I should just stay with that first. Like the Bills had their franchise quarterback after so many years of how everybody was clinging. We were clinging to Drew Bledsoe when he got traded, hoping he would be the guy, after clinging to Rob Johnson and Doug Flutie. And before that, it was Alex Van Pelt and Todd Collins and all these guys you were trying to hang your hat on. And then we know the later name guys with, okay, Bill Walsh, on his deathbed says that Trent Edwards is going to be like the greatest quarterback ever. So it's going to be him. And the Bills get Lossman and all these different guys of hoping that they would be the prince that was promised. And the Bills get Josh Allen, and not only do they get their franchise guy, but they get one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And it's just, for my money, I still think Patrick Mahomes is tops. But if you want to tell me that Josh Allen's the best quarterback in the league, I won't really fight you. And it's not because I'm not a because I'm a Bills fan. Oh, Jeff Toole. That's funny. Yeah, Jeff Toole. We thought Jeff Toole was going to be the guy. Josh Allen's got these traits and this ability and physical tools, mental, all of it that we're going to talk about in a bit. He's got so much to his game that puts him in that conversation for arguably the best quarterback in the league and one of the best players in the entire NFL. And it's so crazy to have a guy like that. And I think what's even crazier is, we talked about some of those trades earlier. We talked about with, Wyatt Teller, the trade scenario and all the picks that led to Josh Allen is wild. So the Bills come into this 2018 draft with 2 first-round picks, the 21st pick overall, which was theirs, and the 22nd pick overall, which was the pick they got from Kansas City the year before when Kansas City traded up to select Patrick Mahomes. So the Chiefs got Mahomes, the Bills got Tre'Davious White, and the 22nd pick overall is those main pieces in the next year's draft. So they come into that with 2 first-round picks and a bunch of other picks, right? The first trade that they enact is they trade Cordy Glenn, the 21st pick in the first round, and then pick 185 in the 6th round. They trade that to the Cincinnati Bengals, and they get the Bengals first round pick, which was pick 12, and then they get pick 187 in the 6th round, which turned into Ray McCloud. They then take that, which they just did, which the move they just made, and they trade pick 12 that they got from the Bengals, pick 53 in the 2nd round, and pick 56 in that round as well. And that 56 pick came from the Sammy Watkins trade to the Rams the year before, so bringing more things full circle. So they trade those 3 picks to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to then move up to pick 7 to take Josh Allen. They also get pick 255, which turned into Austin Proehl, a little more full circle. So just the wizardry starting off bright and early for Beane in this era. And I think that's something like that I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on as well. Like to be able to I feel like that's like where it really all starts for me with Brandon Beane of like playing chess. Like he was thinking so many moves ahead to be able to make this happen. Like, and everything connects. Like it's wild.
Yeah. And I think he talked a little bit about the moves that he made today, making those anticipated moves to have the option to, go get a franchise quarterback if they needed to, regardless of how their record turned out during the year. So it was nice to hear that. Yeah, like you said, playing chess, man. Just something, there's something about having a franchise quarterback, which, I was pretty young when Jim Kelly was the franchise quarterback for the Bills. I mean, I was old enough to be sent home crying 4 Super Bowls in a row, so I understood, the team and the quarterback that they had and the team overall that they had. But I mean, this feeling of having a franchise quarterback, and not only that, like we're in the game, we're evaluating every single year. Cover One's first Senior Bowl was when Josh Allen was there. So, being there from the ground level and watching him develop has really been probably the best part of having a franchise quarterback. Wouldn't you say, Kendall?
Yeah, watching his growth has just been incredible because, everyone looks at 2020, everyone looks at 2021, and they look at this MVP caliber quarterback. If he cleans up a few things each year, he could have been MVP 2 years in a row. But people forget about what he was when he was a rookie, coming in replacing Nate Peterman when he had the mindset to be a starter, but he had to take that back seat and kind of be quiet but confident, take that back seat. And then when your name is called, you step up. And he did. He wasn't perfect by any means, but he stepped up and he showed those traits that got him drafted. And when you continue to show those traits, you continue to bet on that guy. And he just continued to build on those traits year after year, game after game. We always talk about this idea that, development and progression, it isn't linear, but we have been spoiled by Josh Allen because everything aside from like maybe that one Packers game has been linear with
That game was
Josh
so bad.
Allen. It was so bad, but like outside of that game, I feel like this entire time with Josh Allen, it's just been straight up, up and up. So it's really wild to go back and just chart the growth from what he was. And, the article that if Josh Allen succeeds, he outsmart everything in math itself, like all of that stuff. It's coming to fruition. It's so wild that we're actually at this point, but most of it really comes down to what Josh Allen is between the ears and less of what he is as a full-bodied person. He's just incredible as what his mental makeup is to continue to work on his craft when a lot of people feel like they've made it. They don't necessarily have to keep working because they've made it and they feel comfortable and complacent where they are. He's never going to be complacent until he goes down as the best quarterback, best player that ever played this game. And I think that's what's so unique and special about him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And why those interviews of, whether it's at the Combine or the Senior Bowl, like those interviews are so telling. And as much film as we study, it's only a small portion of the player, the prospect. And I have a tweet up from Johnny Kinsley at Brickwall Blitz. He put out something the other day, and he does that deep ball project of, accuracy on deep ball throws. His tweet was, Bills fans, Josh Allen's 2021, 2022 deep passing numbers are up, and they're a game changer. Allen has by far the highest accuracy percentage on throws of 21 plus yards I've ever charted. And his little picture there, it says, not only would Josh Allen's 67.19% accuracy percentage rank first among 35 quarterbacks in last year's deep ball project, it is by far the highest mark from any QB that Johnny has ever charted on throws of 21 plus yards or more. The game has changed. And I bring that up because my response to that was coachability. You talked about it, Kendall, his ability, his drive, his competitiveness, but his coachability, his ability to, take the criticism, and he's his biggest critic. He always says that, takes the things that he doesn't do well or he didn't do well during the season or, leading into the draft a few years back and working on that. And this was one of those things. Deep ball passes, his first couple years, that was like his big thing. It's like, okay, he's got a big arm. He's got a strong arm, right, Anthony? But they weren't really able to use it because of the accuracy, the lack of accuracy on those throws of 20 to 21 yards or more down the field.
And that's what, for me, has been the most impressive thing. Every year, it seems like every offseason, whether it's because of his work with Jordan Palmer or the work with Dable and Dorsey, whatever have you, he comes back stronger every single year, like out of every fight. If there's any Dragon Ball Z watchers here, he's like a Saiyan. Like every fight, they get stronger, they get better, and that's why they continue to be the best. Like he works on something every year. First, it was that deep ball, accuracy, and then it was, more of the platform that he was throwing from with his lower body and, shoulder alignment and accuracy and arm angle and all that kind of stuff and motion. And then comes into this year and wanted to be better on his intermediate throws and being able to put better ball placement for his receivers for yards after catch. And then while he's doing all that, he's still progressing mentally, which is the big one. His ability to play quarterback mentally, his ability to see the whole field, to go through his progressions, to manipulate safeties, to read coverages pre-snap and be able to manipulate them post-snap off of what he's seeing, to be able to be wrong in his reads pre-snap, but then adjust post-snap and figure out what to do game to game, week to week. It's just been tremendous, the trajectory that he's been on. And the scary thing for the rest of the league and the fun thing for Bills fans is that he still hasn't hit his ceiling. He still can get better. He still can continue to grow. And like Kendall said, with that chip that he always has, that proverbial chip on his shoulder, he can continue to get better. And it's wild to say that because he's, I'm not a huge person into raw stats. I know none of us are, but some fun things for Josh Allen, right? So we mentioned that he was second in the 2020 NFL MVP voting, and I was going to go over his raw, career stats, but forget that. Let's just talk about some records. He's the only player in NFL history with 4,000 passing yards, 30 passing touchdowns, and 8 rushing touchdowns in a season. He's the only player in NFL history with 100 passing touchdowns and 20 rushing touchdowns in his first 4 seasons. He's second all time in the NFL in total touchdowns in his first 4 seasons, behind only Dan Marino. He's the only QB in NFL history with 3 straight seasons of 7 or more rushing touchdowns. He's the only QB in NFL history with 300 passing yards, 60 rushing yards, and 5 passing touchdowns in a playoff game. That came in this year's wild card versus New England. Those 5 passing touchdowns are also the most in a game in Bills playoffs history. He has 4 playoff games with 250 passing yards and 50 rushing yards. No other QB in NFL history has more than 2. His in 2021, the regular and postseason combined, he was the second most pressured QB with 264 pressures. Of the 54 QBs with at least 50 dropbacks, he was only 27th in sacks. He was only sacked 28 times. He also had the 5th lowest pressure to sack percentage at 10.6, a testament to his maneuverability, his escapability in the pocket, and his understanding of what is going on around him. The biggest question, obviously, is, do the Bills need to build a dome? Can he play in front of crowds? We don't know yet still, but there's some, things to bank on for sure.
I was wondering if you were going to say that.
I wasn't gonna, and then I was like, screw it, I'm going for it.
You have to.
all in. Kendall, so I just asked the chat, and you guys definitely respond in the chat. Let us know your favorite play from Josh Allen last season. And maybe what I asked Anthony and Kendall prior to the show was, what is the one play that really kind of encompasses who Josh Allen is as a player? So I'll throw it to you, Kendall, first. What play from 2021 really, encapsulates Josh Allen, or maybe it was just your favorite play as I let the film roll?
I remember you asked us this like a few days ago, and I just started like throwing like 5 to 10 plays at you. It was like, I can't pick. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, because there's so many parts of him that describes like what is best about Josh Allen. There's so many different ways that he can win, but this is actually the one I did settle on, this throw against the Chiefs to Emmanuel Sanders. And Sanders even came out after the game and said, I don't know if I've ever caught a better touchdown pass in my entire career. He said that right after the game in press conference. And this is just an incredible arm talent throw, but also the way the season had gone through 4 games to this point, how much interior pressure he had been feeling and how comfortable he was in the pocket in that moment, and to step up into that throw and to fire a laser on the money to Emmanuel Sanders. It was just spectacular. And one of the biggest moments to that point in the season. It was just a spectacular play. It doesn't encompass everything that is Josh Allen, and we will get to those plays, but that was one that I couldn't leave out.
Yeah, that throw with Sanders having that DB stacked, and the DB not totally being out of phase, but the throw from the right hash to the far left sideline with the receiver stacked. Josh had to throw it on a line. It was a really nice throw, and this play kind of shows the competitiveness, a 4th down play here. I honestly don't know, Anthony, if this was supposed to be a run and Josh says, screw that, I'm keeping it. But either way, the move and this is when we broke down the move right here where he jumps back inside of Jackson right there, and Jackson hits his own guy. Man, this was one of those memorable plays from the year.
This was like that embodiment of Josh Allen, similar to the run on Thanksgiving against the Dallas Cowboys, where he fumbles that 4th down snap, but then gets it back and struggles.
Very
forward.
Similar feel. Very
true. And it's just so funny, even hearing Kendall like talk about his favorite play. Like our whole DM was like going back and forth and be like, no, wait, what about this one? Oh, wait, I forgot about.
I had to stop you guys. I was like, no, just pick one, guys. Just one. I know it's
difficult. It was like Christmas morning, and there were just so many good presents.
That's exactly what it is. There's and you don't know which to open first. But this one, again, like we talk about the physical tools and traits and everything that he has, and that's on display here. His athleticism, his agility, his power, his burst, all that kind of stuff. But this one is a drive. This one is a mental type of internal type of thing that we've seen from him before. And that was a had to have it play on a 4th down, and he got it, and it led to the Bills winning that game. And those are the types of things that you like to see because those encapsulate and embody who he is as a person and a player.
Yeah, this one, I put a poll out there in our Slack channel. A lot of the guys pick some of these plays. This is that 2-point conversion. You can see there is no one open over here. Everyone is covered. But Josh scrambles around, and years ago we would have crushed him for turning his back to the line of scrimmage. But he does that right here. Gets away from Chris Jones right there, squares his shoulders, and waits to the very last second for Diggs on cover along the back line. Diggs makes a play, gets his feet down. I mean, this is obviously, I know you do, but there were some great moments from Josh Allen in this game. Look at him scramble around there. Here comes Reed bearing down on him. And then, you don't realize the traffic that he had to throw this through in order to get it as he's rolling left, getting his hips and shoulders around. And he kind of like cocks it right there. Like he wants to throw it right now, but he's not able to. And so then he holds it one more click and then makes it over the top of the cornerback and in the back of the end zone over Hitchens for the 2-point conversion. Just a remarkable play, one that one of our Slack channel subscribers said was their favorite. Here's another one from the Jets game where he basically has the linebacker coming full throttle at him and hits him. He absorbs the hit and still makes the throw to Diggs in the front of the end zone for the touchdown. Another remarkable play, Kendall, that, again, Josh Allen's size and his arm tail and everything. Stiff arm right there. You can see on Quinnen Williams escaping the pocket. And now watch the linebacker. Full blow right at Josh Allen. He hits him. He really gets a lick on Josh Allen. It barely affects Josh Allen. So much so, he almost made it look like, okay, I'm going to take the hit and then make the throw.
Yeah.
And he still has the balance and body control. Look at him.
Look at the ball placement.
Yeah. Money play from him and there, Kendall.
I think this play is probably the best play. If you were to ask me this again, this is the one that really encapsulates everything. Like everything that is Josh Allen, because it has arm talent in it. It has accuracy to where he's been to where he currently is now. It has the mental toughness to just want to work through every tackle, mental and physical toughness, and just the wherewithal about him to somehow find his guy, embrace the contact, and make the throw through the contact. It is everything that is Josh Allen. It's escapability, it's arm talent, it's improvisational ability, and it all comes full circle into one play.
Yeah, we talk about escapability. This is that play from the Texans game. So he has Diggs right here, and Diggs is basically bracketed from the corner and safety. And outside of structure, you can see Josh Allen make the guys miss, and Diggs comes all the way across the field here, and you'll see it better from the end zone angle. But again, making plays behind the line of scrimmage from Josh Allen, and then Diggs uncovering along the boundary. But this was one of the plays I thought when I talked and asked about, the play of Josh Allen that really kind of embodies him. This was it for me. You see the play action fake to his right, and now he's turning back to the defense, and he's got two guys on his ass right now. And now he, instead of just keeping with the roll this way into some of this traffic, he reverses field this way, and it makes those guys miss on a dime. And the athleticism it cannot be stated enough here. Look at how he pivots right there and then gets out the back door and then reacquires his target.
On a wet field, by the way. The Bills' pants look gray here because it was pouring rain. So he makes this play with his feet and his arm in the rain. Like, it's a wet day. It's not easy regularly, let alone with the weather.
Yeah, and then the big arm, the big throw down the field to Diggs, Anthony.
This one is the end zone angle of this is beautiful. There's certain plays that show up great on the broadcast. There's certain plays that show up great on the sideline, all 22, and then certain from the end zone. This one, the end zone angle from this one and the one versus Washington are just poetry. And I love Diggs seeing what's going on in the backfield. So like you mentioned, he plays a little scramble drill, uncovers, and Allen just sees all that space and Diggs sees all that space. And just, it's just like a flick of the wrist laser. And the DB is there. outstretched arm, reaches with the right arm, just can't get there. Elam puts it in the right placement for the DB not to be able to make it a play, but also not far enough that it's going to be out of bounds. Like, I know there's a lot of room on the sideline, but that throw is hard. And that one was up there for me. This one
is yours, right?
This one isn't what I think encapsulates Josh Allen completely. I think the Jets one does that from a pure throw perspective. This is my favorite throw. And you'll see it here from the sideline angle. Just, he's got nowhere to go with this ball to Manny because the end zone acts like a boundary and another defender. I'm so glad you went to the end zone angle. This is very similar to the Texans one, but he's got an even smaller window to fit this in. Manny has not cleared the DB yet. Plus, he doesn't have as much room to work with because he's already at the numbers. Look at where Allen lasers that ball low and away to allow Manny to slide underneath it, make the catch, stay in bounds, but get it away from the lunging defensive back. And he's doing all of that while he's rolling to his right, kind of throwing straight, but also like a little to the left from a degree perspective of his body. Like that. But again, it's like Kendall said, like these are all presents on Christmas morning. Which do I want to open first? These plays are all stupid. Like they're, how do you pick one of like, what is the best or what's your favorite? Like, cause you could pick one. I could pick one. The fans could all pick one and you'd all be right. They could all be a separate play. You could pick 20 different plays and they would all have a case because he's made so many ridiculous throws and plays in general. It's just awesome to have a dude like that. It's so fun.
Yeah, and talk about awesome plays and throws. I mean, you really can't get much bigger than 4th and 13 with 2 minutes left. You just took a sack. You dumped it down to Devin Singletary for a loss on the prior play. Money down, got to have it down. You see Gabriel Davis, who is a guy that is going to get some shine in 2022. This route right here.
Poor Mike Hughes.
Breaking the ankles of Mike Hughes. And then, again, the throw. You see the pump fake right there from Josh Allen. Kind of gets his safety to drift a little bit right here. And then the throw from the right hash around the 34-yard line on a rope to Gabriel Davis in the end zone for the touchdown. Again, 4th and long, 4th and 13. Money throw from Josh Allen. And he was money the entire playoffs, including this game against Kansas City, right, Kendall?
Yeah, this game, it's tough to go back and like look at with a positive eye, but like when you watch a play like this, you can't keep those negative blinders on. Like it's such a great play. It's so amazing. When you need it most, he comes through, and he's shown it in multiple occasions, not just this game, not just this year. He has shown he has the clutch gene. He has what it takes mentally to lead his team back from deficits and carry them on his back to victory. And this is one of those moments where, hey, he did it. The coaching staff kind of let him down, but hey, he did it. He did it on this play, obviously in part to Gabe Davis in that route. I mean, honestly, that throw probably could have been placed a little bit better, but it didn't matter at all because Davis dropped his man.
Yeah, I mean, that was just from top to bottom, Dable, the staff, the scouting staff, they knew what coverage that the Chiefs were going to be in that situation, and they had the perfect route and play call overall for Josh Allen to execute. So, yeah, I mean, once he beat Mike Hughes there, and he tortured him there. Like, he just totally he toasted up. It was an awesome route and an exciting, talking about someone that the Bills have developed and have high hopes for. Gabriel Davis is one of those guys, and I'm sure we'll eventually get to evaluating him and his draft class here down the line. But let's move on. We got some of the fun out of the way. Josh Allen film, some of the highlights, some of the plays that you guys picked as premium subscribers. We got to break down some of those and take a look at them. So let's move on to Siran Neal, guy that just got the extension, 5th-round pick. He's another guy, much like Taron Johnson, that I believe is a great scouting story. Good job of developing and understanding his skill set and unique skill set, I should say, and using it. And we're probably going to see more of him next season. So a guy that played, safety, corner, linebacker, you name the position, he played it in college. And he's another guy, the Bills are huge supporters of the Senior Bowl. They love picking guys that play in that event. he was no different. And honestly, he was a guy that didn't look all that good at the Senior Bowl. But again, he played so many different positions. It was difficult to really get a beat on what position to play him at. But the Bills had a pretty good idea and a role for him, aside from just special teams, kind of being that, big nickel, buffalo nickel, whatever you want to call it.
Thick dime.
Thick time, which in week 5, that was the case. So, and again, that's something, if you guys follow me on Twitter, I posted some clips from that game when he bodied Travis Kelce a bunch, and that's something we're going to see going forward. But mainly he's been that special teams ace. And, Rob Quinn and the guys did an interview with him in the offseason leading into this season about his role, his development. And he talked about, kind of sidling up to the Lorenzo Alexanders of the world on that team, and how, he looked at him and how he transformed his body, but also his career. And he realized that he wasn't going to get a lot of playing time early, and that he's going to have to be a special teams guy. And he embraced that role. He grabbed the bull by the horns and said, you know what? I have the skill set to be great at that, to be a great special teamer, regardless of what, unit he was going to be on. He grabbed it. And I mean, he has been that in a bag of chips. Honestly, he's been so good as a special teams player. 1,144 snaps have been on special teams. He had a career high 11 solo tackles this season, which led the team. It's the traits when it comes to special teams. It's the mental toughness. It's the athleticism, something that Jordan Poyer had told him, hey, you're probably the most athletic guy in the defensive back room. Like, you can do something with that. Even if they're not going to use you on defense, like, do what you have to do to stay in the league. And when your opportunity arises, step up. And he has in several different ways and several different games, again, at so many different positions, right, Anthony?
Yeah, he has been a jack of all trades in a variety of ways. And his special teams contributions, like you mentioned, are so strong. I feel like unless you're a returner or a bad kicker or a bad punter or a good kicker, you don't get noticed on special teams. Or maybe if you're Matthew Slater or Steve Tasker, like, special teamers don't get talked about. And there's a reason so many Bills fans know Siran Neal. It's because he's a core special teamer. He's a quality guy. He gets talked up by the players. He gets talked up by the coaches. And then he's got that versatility to come in on defense in a pinch, whether, we've seen it multiple times because of injury. He can play a little bit of boundary corner. He can play a little monster man, buffalo nickel, whatever you want to go with. But his mindset and his mentality, like you talked about, is the key for me. He's that guy who is seemingly your proverbial, like, always ready. He's never the guy who's sitting there, like, kind of, jokey, like, doesn't know where his helmet is, isn't ready to get on the field. It's like, oh, so-and-so, you need to get in there for that guy right now. And he gets in, he knows his assignment. He knows what's asked of him. He knows what his role and responsibility is. He plays within himself, regardless of what unit or where he is. And he got re-upped. He's going to be here for several more years. We look to him to carry that special teams torch. And with that athleticism and versatility, I don't know, potentially maybe he has more of a role in this defense going forward, considering how he's a little bit, Swiss Army knife-like, and how the Bills like to use guys like that. But at the end of the day, even though he's a special teamer mainly, he's a core member of this team and a nice guy to bring back and re-up and have him continue to be part of this team out of this 2018 draft class.
Yeah, and I know the numbers haven't quite been released on his contract. And there's some people that like to, worry about those type of details. I'm not one of those guys. Even if the number is what it is, Beane has a plan when it comes to structuring contracts. I'm not worried about that. But with that said, Kendall, get your thoughts on Neal and, his development from his time in college and with the Bills.
Yeah, I think the development from his time in college is definitely the big thing, because a guy out of Jacksonville State, you're not thinking, oh, this guy has a real shot to stick around. Yeah, you're not thinking much of that. But what the Bills have turned him into is really something that you squeezed a lot of value out of. And he was someone who, high RAS score guy, really great athleticism. But what were you going to do with him on defense? What were you going to do with him on your roster? How was he going to make your roster? And he found his home on special teams. But now it's time to turn the page. Year after year, we've said, hey, is this the year that he's really going to start giving us those contributions on defense? And now that he's got the money, now that he's got whatever the final figures turn out to be, now that he's gotten some extra money off of what was that cost-controlled rookie deal as a 5th rounder, now it's time to prove, okay, you got to really start to show that you're worth this, because we know you're worth it from a special teams perspective. But can you give us that added bonus on defense? And I think he has it in him. I looked to like this past preseason. I felt as much as he was getting burned by Amon-Ra St. Brown in that one terrible play against the Bears that everyone said was terrible, but it was just a good throw and catch. He knows what he's doing out there. He's playing good defense. People are going to get burned in the secondary. It's just what happens. It's just kind of the league that we're in right now. It's built to be favorable to the offense, the passer and the catcher. So he's not going to be 100% this lockdown corner or some lockdown nickel corner, but I definitely see the upside and the reason to give him that extra money, whatever the figures may be, because he does have upside. He does have defensive upside, whether he's realized it yet or not.
Yeah, and I think, with the way the schedule this season is shaping up, I definitely could see him, being inserted as that big nickel. But more importantly, I like him when he is allowed to man up against opposing tight ends, whether they're in 11 or 12. Like, if you want to play man coverage, put him on the tight end. He's shown that he can do that. He's shown that he can get into good trail technique and force the quarterback to throw it up and over and make those, have to drop a dime in order to complete it to that guy. Let him just trail someone and play man coverage against tight ends. I think that is something that it's with his athleticism, he's able to do. And that'll just free your linebackers up. That'll just free your safeties up from that perspective, allow them to roam a little more. It's something that, I wish, and I'm not the only one that says this, that they would have done in that divisional game against the Chiefs, because it did work relatively well when they did it in week 5. So it's something that we all want to see going forward with him. And if they had mentioned that to him, that his role may expand, I mean, I take him at the word. And so I believe that they will try to incorporate him more, again, especially with the schedule and, the opposing offenses that they're going to see in this coming season. So with that said, happy for him. A guy that's really earned it, has paid his dues on special teams. Now, hopefully, he could take that next step, as you said, Kendall, into getting some more memorable reps, in any role that they can find for him on the defense. So with that said, let's move on to a couple of the guys that have possible contracts on the horizon with the Bills, or maybe as free agency opens. Let's start off with Harrison Phillips, Anthony.
Yeah, Harrison Phillips, for those who don't know, free agent. Current market value per Spot Track is $5.4 million AAV, average annual value. His projected deal is 2 years, $10.853 million, which would rank him 29th amongst all defensive tackles in terms of contract, which I think, given the role that he plays in this defense and what he's done, I think that's a pretty affordable deal. If we bring him around at that kind of monetary value at 2 or 3 years, I'm very, very, very cool with that. Anything under 5 would be a bargain and even better. What's fun is, so I uploaded his RAS score into this so people could see visually how athletic he is. So this is out of 10, 8.11 you see in the green. That's very good. Like, his athleticism really stands out. And what's fun is, you'll see several of those green pieces there. So he had 42 reps of 225 pounds in the bench at the NFL Combine in 2018. That put him in the 98.8 percentile amongst defensive tackles and the 97.7 percentile for size. Wow. He ran the 3-cone drill in 7.28 seconds, which placed him in the 95th percentile for defensive tackles and the 96th percentile for size. He had a 32-inch vertical, which placed him in the 83rd percentile for defensive tackles and the 88th percentile for size. Strong, athletic from like a traits perspective, which makes sense given the type of plays that we see him make. Like, he's not a burner. He's not running people down necessarily sideline to sideline. If he does, it's because of proper angle and hustle, but he's got strength. He can anchor down. He can play you some one tech. He can 2-gap every once in a while. He can take on a double team. He can drop the knee, right? We've seen him overcome injuries, but this, I think, is something that really, I don't think a lot of Bills fans recognize how athletic he is for his position, which is good because at 307 pounds, being a defensive tackle, being on this Bills defensive front that, as we mentioned, uses light boxes in terms of number, but also uses light boxes in terms of weight of their defensive line, especially their defensive tackles. You need a guy who's able to use every single ounce of weight and every ounce of strength that they have because they're not the biggest and they're not the bullies up front. Oh, Erik, you're muted. Oh, you pulled a Greg. You're muted. You didn't know it.
Yeah. So we're looking at the run defense grades and run defensive stop percentages for defensive tackles, courtesy of Pro Football Focus. And you can see Harrison Phillips is ranked 6th in 2021 with a 10.0. Actually, let me sort it here. That might do better here. So, okay, Ed Oliver is 8th. And if we scroll down a little bit, you're going to see Harrison Phillips at 21st. So he's got a 10 run stop percentage, had 25 run stops for a defensive tackle. And, I mean, if you look at some of his tackles from last year, his tackle numbers were phenomenal. 25, I'm sorry, 20. Where is he at? 39 tackles for a defensive tackle. As a nose tackle, he was primarily a shade defensive tackle in the Bill scheme. As Anthony said, a scheme that has a lot of light boxes, but also a defensive front and defensive line that typically has those lighter defensive tackles and defensive linemen. I mean, having a nose tackle, with his light weight, but also the strength, really stands out, and his ability to keep those offensive linemen off of him and at arm's length. It just really stands out. Again, when he's healthy, he's one of the better guys pound for pound at nose tackle.
Yeah, he's really these numbers. I know a lot of people want to see it on the field. They want to see what's happening in those games. But these numbers that you see from Harrison Phillips, they really translate to the field. Like everything you see on the field, it is shown perfectly in these numbers. Yeah. He really is top of the league, top half of the league in just about every advanced run stopping metric. He really has established himself when healthy as a top nose tackle in the league. And it's because of that athleticism and strength. That blend of athleticism and strength was shown time and time again this season. Once he got healthier, you could see how he was able to keep those linemen at arm's length, like you said, and make sure he doesn't get reestablished off that line of scrimmage. He establishes that line of scrimmage and keeps it where it's at, but also shows some range to move laterally with his guy and still make a tackle. There were multiple times like on those Patriots crack toss plays where he was getting out there and making plays on them.
Yes.
And that's not something you look at his RAS score and you're like, oh, that's a bad 40 time. Oh, he didn't have a great broad jump or a great 10-yard split.
Got that
but
free cone,
but it shows on tape because he's got that motor that never quits.
Yeah, and his recognition goes a long way with the young defensive ends that the Bills have brought in over the last few years. When he's on the field with those guys are talking to him and asking him, "Hey, they're in this formation. What are we looking for? What are our keys?" He's been the guy. He has been the Kyle Williams the last couple of years along that defensive line, the guy that these younger guys look to for help when the bullets are flying. And it's been fun to watch him progress, especially when we're talking health, because man, when he's healthy, he is technically sound. He is sound from the shoulders up. He rarely blows an assignment. If you guys haven't had a chance to get to the YouTube channel and watch the breakdown I did on him, it's a short breakdown talking about some of his traits over the last couple of years and especially this year. Get to it after the live show here. He's just been so much fun to watch, from playing in an odd front as a nose tackle and odd front at Stanford and transitioning to that 4-3, that one gapping type defense that Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott run. But I'll give you the last word on Harrison Phillips, Anthony, because he was a guy that obviously you were in charge of for this episode.
I also love that he's the Bills' Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. Like, they don't just throw those out. Like, he's a good dude off the field, a leader in the community. I think the health piece is something that's important, because when healthy, he's been quality, and we missed him in 2019. He tore his ACL in week 3. That was the second ACL tear in that left knee. He tore it first back in 2015. And then, Erik, you and I were talking offline before the episode started. He sprained his PCL in the preseason this year before the season started, which I completely forgot about. And then I remember going to one of the open practices. I was there with Greg and several guys from the Slack channel, and we were all just staring at Harrison Phillips' lower body. Does he have a brace? How fast is he running? Can he plan on it? What's he doing? We were super worried because he was having a good preseason, and then he hurt his knee again, but he came back and had a really good 2021 regular season and postseason combined. He finished with 555 total snaps. That is the most in an individual season in his entire career. He had a 44% snap share, which was 5th on the Bills' defensive line, but 2nd amongst defensive tackles, which this year was tremendously needed. Star's availability and his play, because of some health things and off the field things, was very roller coastery and up and down. Justin Zimmer was a nice guy, defensive tackle. He goes down. Ed Oliver's having this tremendous quality year. And then there's all these questions at the other defensive tackle spot. Harrison Phillips provided some, floor ability and some sustainability and stability at that pace and at that position. And, some more stats for him, advanced metrics. He was 8th amongst all defensive tackles in run stop win rate, which I think is tremendous. Also, fun fact, Ed Oliver was 9th. So really cool for both of those guys. And you guys mentioned the PFF scores and you pulled it up earlier. It was 21st in run stops amongst defensive tackles with 25, which was 7 more than he had in 2020 when he had 18. And again, so that's 21st in run stops out of 164 defensive tackles that have at least 50 run defense snaps. So he's at 21st out of 164 defensive tackles. That's fantastic. And then some people want to say, oh yeah, but maybe he had a ton of snaps. Well, he was 22nd in run stop percentage, again, out of those 164 defensive tackles. He had an average depth of tackle of 2.4. In 2020, his average depth of tackle was 1.7, which was 29th, again, out of all those defensive tackles with at least 50, run defense snaps. So he's been a sneaky quality producer for this Bills grouping. I think somebody that a lot of us would like to see come back to Buffalo. He's a good guy for the community. He's a good guy in the locker room. He went to Stanford, and as Richard Sherman has told us time and time again, everybody who goes to Stanford is a genius. So Harrison Phillips is obviously tremendously smart. He grinds, he works hard. He's come back from multiple injuries. He's a quality dude in the locker room and on the field as well. And somebody that, in a rotation up front on the defensive line and in D tackle is, a really core piece of this team from a depth perspective, and somebody who can also give you quality snaps, from front to back.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And to wrap this up, Michael says, sounds like Harry is going to be testing free agency. I will say this without giving some of the details. I don't think that's going to be true. I say in the next few days a deal will be done between the Bills and Harrison
Source.
Phillips. I think that basically, everyone's in Indy right now. I think something's going to happen over the next few days, hopefully sooner than later, so that we can, again, congratulate him, because he's just a great guy for the community, a great guy for the team on and off the field. You really can't say many things bad about Harrison Phillips, aside from, again, availability, which is a big thing, obviously, for Beane, but I believe that they'll get the deal done. So moving on to a guy that, man, if we're talking about, deals being done, I mean, a lot of the fan base is saying that Tremaine Edmunds is worth getting another deal, getting a second contract. And then the other half of the fan base is saying he's terrible and, that he shouldn't. So, I mean, I don't know where you guys stand, but we're going to dive into some of the analytics that Kendall found here over the last week or so. And then some of the film, obviously, kind of explaining the advanced analytics and where it could get a little dicey when we're talking coverage stats. But Kendall, I'm going to give it to you, man. Give us your thoughts on Tremaine Edmunds and what you found in your research.
Look at his face.
Right. First things first, we need to preface this. Please, everyone, if you disagree, ask a question. Don't close your mind and say he's trash. Let's just preface this with, why do you think that? Ask the curiosity question instead of the accusatory, combative remarks. So that's my preface. No, the first thing is, what I do want to say is I think everyone's really upset with Beane for trading up for Tremaine Edmunds when they could have had Fred Warner in the third round. And I mean, that's understandable, but I mean, you don't know how they felt about Fred Warner. They clearly wanted to bet on traits with Tremaine Edmunds. And they
also,
did
that means him going in the third means every other team passed on him
team.
twice.
100%.
Exactly.
Same thing with Darius Leonard. Everybody passed on him in the first round,
Yes.
and then a bunch of teams passed on him in the second.
Exactly. And the point I'm going for with this is the Bills traded their 22nd overall pick to get up to 16. That 22nd overall pick turned into Rashaan Evans, who's about to get beat out by David Long in Tennessee for that linebacker position. Like Rashaan Evans wasn't anything either. Yeah, they could have picked, Darius Leonard or Fred Warner, whatever. But the point is, Beane didn't really mess up with the trade up to go get him. That we shouldn't be placing blame there. Everything really comes down to how much of the potential is Edmunds realizing. And I think a lot of people are upset that he hasn't realized all of that potential, and they're getting afraid of the payday that he's going to get. And I need to echo Erik's sentiments on who cares. If Beane thinks he can get it done, he can get it done. Beane knows how to work the books. If you guys have problems with it, talk to our guy Greg. I'm sure he can tell you how it's going to work out, even if it happens. But I understand people getting a little wishy-washy about assigning so much money to the front seven. But maybe that's the philosophy of this team, assigning money to the front seven and developing guys on the back four.
And just kind of piggyback that real quick before you get into some of these analytics.
Mhm.
And because it's something that we've always talked about the last few weeks when Tremaine Edmunds has come up in the conversation is, guys, we don't want to spend $25 million among two linebackers. But as we talked about, first of all, the Bills defense is a nickel defense. So, Milano and Edmunds are going to be on the field a majority of the time.
Mm-hmm.
That third linebacker who they're paying AJ Klein to be that third linebacker, they're paying him a hefty price when they really could scale that back a little more. But with that said, times are a little different, and this defense is a little different because they play so much nickel and because they, rely on those linebackers to play coverage so much more than a lot of other defenses in the league. So you have to take that into account when talking about the value of the linebackers, the value of a Taron Johnson. We talked about that, his role as a slot corner, like that nuance has to be incorporated in this conversation.
Yes, absolutely. That is a massive part of it. It is the importance of the linebacker position in this defense. But now that I'll jump into the analytics, I'm not going to jump into the coverage stuff quite yet because there's a lot with that. Yeah. There's so many different columns with that because it gets muddied. But simply with the run defense advanced stats, I broke it down with missed tackle rate, stop percentage, and average depth of tackle. So obviously a big thing with Tremaine Edmunds was his missed tackles. Everyone was like, he's missing too many tackles. Mm-hmm. He doesn't make enough hard-hitting tackles, all of this kind of stuff. So I looked at 2021, where does he rank missed tackle rate? And you look at these guys that people are like, oh, I wish the Bills had. Roquan Smith, Devin Bush, Demario Davis, Fred Warner, Levante David, Bobby Wagner, Micah Parsons, Miles Jack, even Matt Milano. All of these guys, Devin White is dead last in this category from this past year. All of these guys are below Tremaine Edmunds. Now, what I will say, Tremaine Edmunds was very poor in this area. He was very poor. In 2019, he was at 13.8%, which was 47th. In 2019, he was at 13.1%, tied for 34th with Zach Cunningham. 2020, he went back up to 13.3, 40th. And we know he had a pretty down 2020 season with the bum shoulder and all. But this year, he really turned it around, bringing it all the way from that 13% area down to 7.5%, which is just an insane arc of progression for that specific area that he needed to focus on. And I think that's something that kind of gets lost in watching the game on broadcast. You see a missed tackle and you kind of support your priors. You're just like, I'm really upset with him because he misses so many tackles. And anytime you see it, even though his numbers were down in 2021, you kind of blame that as a reason not to re-sign Tremaine Edmunds.
Yeah, and one of the things that always stands out with him is obviously his size and his length. And that tackle radius has always been touted as, a strength for him. And, it was nice to see him improve in this area, not miss as many tackles. And again, the scheme has a lot to do with that. If you go back and look at some of the, obviously Luke Kuechly is probably the exception, but like even Thomas Davis for the Panthers, like he, much like Milano and Tremaine Edmunds early on in his career, missed tackles because they're aggressive. Especially Milano. He's a guy that just wants to make those tackle for losses.
Yes.
You're going to have, that's kind of the aggressiveness you want him to play with, and you got to live with him missing tackles. It kind of comes with the territory of playing in this defense. And as Anthony talked about, a lot of times, they're light in the box there, and you're having a linebacker having to basically occupy and account for two gaps. And if he guesses wrong, he may not have a chance to make a tackle. If he's guesses right and goes and shoots fires his gun, he may just miss a tackle, or he may make a tackle for loss. So it was nice to see him improve in this area.
Yeah, 100%. This was definitely something that I was happy to see the breakdown of, where it started in 2018 to where it is in 2021. I'm actually going to jump straight to average depth of tackle because I think it plays right off of what you were just saying. And the way I see Edmunds and Milano, it's kind of a symbiotic relationship that I could compare to a 1-tech versus a 3-tech. And I think the way they work together, I think are very similar with what the Bills do at the second level with their linebackers. Milano is your aggressing, disruptive 3-tech, and Tremaine Edmunds is your 2-gapping, make sure you push the cut back to your 3-tech, 1-tech. That's kind of how I see them. It's you kind of just extrapolate the 3-tech and 1-tech positions and push it back to the second level. That's how I view those two. And that's why year after year, you're going to see Edmunds has a lower average depth of tackle than Matt Milano, because Matt Milano is the downhill player. He's the aggressor. He's going to go after those splashier plays, which is why everyone loves Matt Milano.
And to add to that, Kendall, and that's because more times than not, that linebacker in Milano is aligned to the strength of the formation.
Yes.
He is covered up by that 3 technique. He's got that aggressive 3 technique in front of him, and Ed Oliver, he's that aggressive guy, so they play off each other. They're the aggressors, as Kendall said. The nose tackle, whether it be Harrison Phillips, Star Latulippe, and Tremaine Edmunds at the second level, those are the safety nets. Those are what I call, the finisher, the wrap-up guy, the netting that, brings the guys down that are trying to run to the strength of the formation, but then eventually are disrupted, forced to cut back, and guess who's there waiting with his wingspan in Tremaine Edmunds.
Exactly. So I won't go into as much detail with these, but really with stop percentage and average depth of tackle, the same point needs to be made that I made with missed tackle rate, where it got better over years, but also compare him to his peers. There are guys that we consider elite at the linebacker position. And these are guys like Fred Warner, Bobby Wagner, Levante David, Devin White, Demario Davis, Eric Kendricks. All of these guys are below Tremaine Edmunds in stop percentage. And you look at average depth of tackle. People complain that all of Edmunds' tackles are 8 yards down the field when it doesn't even matter. Once the first down has already been had, stuff like that. Look who's below him: Bobby Wagner, Devin White, Levante David, Miles Jack, Eric Kendricks, Demario Davis. The point I'm trying to make is not that Tremaine Edmunds himself is elite, but every elite player isn't perfect. Every elite player has weaknesses. Every player in the NFL has weaknesses. It's about matching those with some strengths. It's about finding those areas that you're weak and making up for them in other areas. And you can't fault Edmunds just because he's 18th here, because you look at guys like Bobby Wagner and he's 24th. So you can't just kind of slap a label on a guy and not compare him to his peers, because his peers actually don't even rank better than him in a lot of areas. Obviously, there are the Darius Leonards of the world who are above him in just
but even that,
category.
that's like it's less than half a yard.
It's so marginal. It is so marginal. And that is the point. And I'll get to the marginal and the ridiculousness of the position a little bit more once we get to coverage.
Yeah, Anthony, I'll throw this to you real quick. Kind of wrap up the segment on, maybe his run defense, his progression in that area, and his role in the Bills defense.
I'm sorry. I just read the comment that says Edmunds' main problem: struggles to disengage from blocks, and then 2, does not consistently diagnose run gaps. I'm so frustrated with the Tremaine Edmunds conversation. Like you you see his role in this defense and what he's asked to do. And again, we're prefacing it with multiple premises. The main one being, we don't think Tremaine Edmunds is elite. Nobody here is saying, because people on Twitter are like, well, Cover One loves Tremaine Edmunds. There are a bunch of Tremaine Edmunds stands. I've seen people who come, stands, people who come and tell me like, well, bro, you love Tremaine Edmunds. I'm on record multiple times on video and on Twitter saying, well, I think Tremaine Edmunds is around like 12 to 15 in terms of like middle linebacker. Sometimes he plays like in top 10, but he's not consistently there. I don't think that's standing for anyone. And I think that's a pretty similar thought amongst us here at Cover One. We don't think he's amazing. But what we think is he bears a burden that is tremendously tough to bear in this defense. What is asked of him in this defense? And I want to pivot because I got into a conversation with a person on Twitter about this. Before anybody comes to say, well, I mean, Luke Kuechly did it. I don't want to hear that the Panthers defense with Luke Kuechly and the Bills defense with Tremaine Edmunds are the same defense. We're not going to go into it in depth now, but just off the basis of the fact that the Panthers played a 4-3 with 3 linebackers and the Bills do not, right there throws your argument completely out the window. It changes a lot of things, let alone the makeup of the defensive line, so on and so forth. Tremaine Edmunds bears a tremendous burden, no pun intended, a tremendous burden on his shoulders. What he's asked to do, the composition and makeup of the personnel in front of him for what he has to do in the run game, where he's asked to 2-gap and what he's asked to read and diagnose, what he does in coverage, which doesn't get appreciated because it doesn't really get seen, his ability to be a deterrent for so many things. But then, you know, something the three of us have talked about so much that we're going to get to in a bit, he gets credited for all those stupid checkdowns in the middle of the field because of the position that he plays and because of the style of defense. So this is not to say that Tremaine Edmunds is amazing. This is not to say that he's elite, that we think he should get Fred Warner or Darius Leonard money or all these things. The point is, 1, scrutinize other players in the league as much as you scrutinize the people on your team. 2, watch those games as much as you do. Because I highly doubt, I don't feel like I'm probably going to sound like a jerk. I want to know for all the people, well, Leonard doesn't do that. Warner doesn't do that. Devondre Campbell this. Cool. How many Packers games are you watching? 2 a year? 1 maybe? How many Niners games are you watching? Like you got Sunday Ticket and you put it on all the time because they don't get a ton of national play like that unless they're on primetime. Watch with the same eye that you scrutinize the Bills players. Do not move goalposts like Kendall has happened to him when he shows stats and someone says, well, go watch the film. And then he's like, well, I did watch the film and I found this. And they're like, well, go get stats. Like, oh, that's funny. This is a Romeo rant with more control. It's just, it's so frustrating because I feel like people don't. And again, when we say this, they're saying we make excuses for him. We're not. He bears a lot on his shoulders and on his plate that a lot of these other linebackers do not, given the scheme and the personnel makeup of this Bills defense. And again, it's not giving him a pass. He can be better. He has plenty of areas of opportunity, but he gets criticized far too much, and too much blame gets put on his shoulders. Sorry.
No, hey, let it all out, man. We're just letting you breathe here, right?
I hate everyone. Kendall,
why don't you carry on with the coverage portion of the stats? It's something that we always talk about. Like, I love PFF for a lot of things aside from their grades, but even I love their advanced metrics, but coverage snaps, especially when we're talking, surrendering a reception to a receiver or a running back, especially when, the Bills defense plays as much zone as they do, it can get really dicey when you're talking about statistics and using those statistics in research. So why don't you talk about that and what you found as far as coverage goes?
So firstly, I want to say I wouldn't be showing these stats if I was a Tremaine Edmunds stan, because these stats don't do him a lot of justice. These stats will expose him, and I wouldn't be showing you these if they supported my narrative. I'm showing you these to explain to you, like Erik is alluding to, why some of these grading systems could use some tweaking and why they don't paint an entirely accurate picture. So my biggest issue with coverage grades and how PFF does their coverage grades is how it ruins zone coverage. It completely ruins the value that every defender has in zone coverage because they're all expected to drop to a specific spot and play out a specific responsibility. And in this Bills defense, we know it's bend, don't break, play high to low on all your reads and let those easy completions in front of you. And then everyone gang tackle together and let's bet that they can't complete or convert multiple third downs and get some points out of this. That's what the Bills defense does. And because of that, there's a lot of checkdowns to the middle portion of the field. And when that happens, when there's a 2-yard completion to a little curl route to a JD McKissick, that gets credited to Tremaine Edmunds, who's dropping 7 to 10 yards back in a cover 2 shell.
Carrying someone up the field.
It doesn't make sense. And that is where, this is me speaking from bias a little bit, but also some objectiveness. I worked for Sports Info Solutions, and we have a data point for when someone is in zone coverage and there's an easy completion and there's a nearest defender, but that nearest defender is like 5 yards away. You don't want to ding that defender for doing his job. You don't want to ding him for dropping into a zone and letting a 2-yard completion happen just because it was there. That's something you ding to team defense, which essentially is just a wash of a stat. You essentially just don't even use that as a metric. That was just, the offense found where the opening in the zone was and they attacked it. You don't want to ding any specific player. That was just the offense reading the defense and finding the hole. And here is the perfect example for Erik. Go for it.
Yeah, so this is the longest reception that Tremaine Edmunds surrendered in 2021. And now I will say he gets manhandled down the field. Don't get me wrong, but this little screen out to Gibson here counted against Tremaine Edmunds' numbers in receptions surrendered. This 73-yard screenplay with Tremaine Edmunds in the middle of the field here, almost to the logo, was charged to him. Again, this would be in SIS's system charged to team defense. This wouldn't go against Tremaine Edmunds. This wouldn't go against his coverage grade like it did by surrendering this. It's a flawed way to look at, grading players, evaluating players, because not every stat, not every play is going to, it should be accounted to someone. Like, just because someone dumps it down 3 yards near the line of scrimmage, when like Anthony said, and your linebackers in Tampa 2 and he's dropping out, like, you can't count that against him. That he's doing his job. When we're going to talk about it in the film room, that, these type of grading systems, you could be doing your job perfectly. You could be consistent, but little checkdowns, little, outlet passes to the flats can still count against you in their system. But if you went into the building and you talked to the coaches of the team, they're like, no, that's not a -1 on him. That's actually a +2. He did his job. He rerouted the guy. Like, it's just a flawed way to look at it. And that's why I do tend to lean more towards Sports Info Solutions. But again, PFF is great, but there are some things that when we look at, the coverage numbers, that it is a little flawed.
Yeah. And specifically, I think a big thing too is how much they add value to those splash plays, those plays that literally add stats to the stat sheet. You look at who has the highest coverage grades. I bet you they have a high number of PBUs and a high number of interceptions. Those are certain things that just inflate that grade like crazy. And plays where Edmunds is making the quarterback look another way and pass the ball to a different guy, which I think we'll get to in specifically the Bucks, the Bucks example. He's making the quarterback go to a different player. He's making the quarterback read the defense in one way. Oh, that's not open. I'm going to pass to this guy. And Edmunds is doing his job there, but he's not getting credit for that in PFF's system because he didn't do anything to create a stat on that play.
Yes.
So that's a lot of it too for me, where just because you create a stat on the stat sheet, that doesn't mean more than any other play where you're doing your job, dropping into the correct area and zone and taking away a receiver.
Yeah, I mean, for the season, Edmunds registered a 34.6 coverage grade according to Pro Football Focus. And their grading starts at 60. So that's basically saying that Tremaine Edmunds was basically a trash can on the field. Like, come on, guys. Like,
well, some people would say that.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it in the pregame notes, so I'm just reiterating what I saw in the notes.
That's right.
But this is that play that, you know, one of the plays that, you know, we're talking about. Like, here's Tremaine Edmunds. He's dropping out into his zone. He deters the throw to this receiver right here and forces the quarterback to go across the field. And you see me highlighting Jordan Poyer right there. And as the quarterback comes across the field, Poyer picks it off. And he has a nice return on that, all because the Bills are in zone coverage. Tremaine Edmunds took away the first option of the quarterback there and, you know, forced the quarterback to go to another option. And the Bills go ahead and register a play, an interception, kind of like the Jerry Hughes thing I posted last night, where he gets a pressure, flushes the quarterback out, and, you know, Micah Hyde gets an interception. But as Kendall said, Where's the love? Where's the love? You know, of course, pressures don't matter, but where's the love for the guy that, you know, was the catalyst to those turnovers, right, Anthony?
Yeah, that's, you know, it's something we've said, like, and then this is where people also come in, like, and I understand this point of view, right? Because we say, you know, Edmunds is a deterrent and is kind of like an assist man, right? That previous play with the Poyer interception shows it, but people. And I get this point. People, based on the fact that we traded up, based on the fact that he was a first-round pick with all these traits, people want more than an assist man. They want a 40, 50-goal scorer. They want those splash plays. They want those impact plays. And I understand that. But there's still both sides. Like, yes, he's not delivering those traditional splash or impact plays that you want, but he still does a lot for this defense and makes a lot of good plays. But again, this brings us to our original point, too, and something we say all the time. What's so problematic about him, and this is where I feel like people think we're making it up or we're stands, a lot of what he does, it's not visible on the broadcast. It's not visible in a box score. It's not visible unless you grind the hell out of film like we grind the hell out of film. And you see these types of plays where he's making plays that don't show up, again, on box scores. They don't show up on the broadcast angle, but he allows others to succeed. He is that hockey assist man, and it's not sexy, and it's not splash plays, but who is that, Proehl or Hardman, that he's carrying up the field? Okay, Proehl. Byron Proehl runs a 4.4. He's carrying a 4.4 wide receiver up the seam of the field. And some people just were, you know, well, he can't read the run. Well, he can't get off blocks. Understandable. Everybody has faults. Stop telling us he can't cover. Look at that.
This is my point of this. The first few plays is, you know, I got into it with someone on Twitter this week about, well, yeah, I expect my linebacker to do that. Oh, so you expect your linebacker to be consistent and carry guys, you know, down the middle of the field in Tampa 2 coverages, a la Urlacher. Like, okay, and you don't want to reward that guy? Yeah, consistent, you know, doing your job and being consistent is why guys get paid market value. They're being asked to do something, and they're executing it consistently. As you see there, another one. Tampa 2 down the middle of the field, and that leads to a pass breakup by Milano underneath. Again, Kendall talked about it. You know, they're symbiotic. They're very, you know, very reliant on each other. They played so many reps together, and they just complement each other so well. So you see Edmunds carry the guy down the middle of the field. And Milano's the guy making the pass breakup. So much like that Poyer play, it's just something that doesn't get talked about.
And that's
enough.
A point too, right there, because what does everybody come away from that play saying? Man, Milano's awesome. Edmunds doesn't do anything.
Yeah,
that's what you see, because Milano gets the sexy plays and Edmunds does not. And that's not to say that we think Edmunds is better. That's not what we're saying. But it's a difference in role combined with the scheme and what they're asked to do.
And Kendall, when I talk to players on the team, especially guys on the defensive side, they always say, you know, their defense wouldn't be as good as it has been if it wasn't for Tremaine Edmunds. And you see him here setting the coverage. It's something he has to do every single play. Every single play, he's got to call the passing strength. He's got to get everyone lined up. He's got to get the front four lined up. All of that prior to the play. And what we're going to get into tonight is kind of their zone coverages, because a lot of people think that, like, hey, if you're playing cover 2, you're playing cover 3, you're just getting to a landmark somewhere on the field. But no. The Bills play pattern matching zone coverages. So what you're going to see tonight is Tremaine Edmunds and the Bills defense running a lot of pattern matching plays. So on this one, you saw Tremaine Edmunds at the beginning of the play kind of like he's playing the air guitar. It's their banjo coverage. It's their trap coverage, usually against 3x1 sets, 3x2 sets like this empty set. So you're going to see Tremaine Edmunds in the slot corner here, Cam Lewis, pattern matching the tight end there. And you're also seeing Trey White, kind of pattern matching, kind of trapping.
Explain to everyone just in case, what do you mean by pattern matching?
So you see the release. Both of those guys are reading the release of the tight end here. Now, if they were hypothetically going to run out routes right here like this, what's going to end up happening is you're going to get the 3 defenders right here trapping. So you're going to get Trey White jumping this out route. You're going to get Cam Lewis jumping that out route by the tight end. And then Tremaine Edmunds, his eyes will basically go back onto the quarterback and play the middle zone here. But what happens on this play is the tight end just hooks it up, right? He just hooks it up. And so when he does that, Tremaine Edmunds breaks on it. Again, take into account where he lined up, the drop, and they're throwing it underneath, right? Throwing it underneath. He wraps them up. This is what the Bills do philosophically. Hey, if you want to throw it underneath, you want to throw it short, we're going to rally and tackle. Edmunds does that. He wraps them up. And then Cam Lewis comes in and punches the ball out. And he gets the glory, and the recovery is made by Klein there. So very, little success on this play went to Tremaine Edmunds when he just did his job. He was consistent with his job, setting the coverage, setting the front. But again, the play goes to Cam Lewis there on the fumble force.
You know what I'll say on that one real quick?
Ahead.
For everyone that wants Tremaine Edmunds to hit harder, if he hit harder on that play, there wouldn't have been a fumble from Cam Lewis. He held him up and allowed the peanut punch. That's my 1 point on that.
Tackle.
And so here's another, banjo coverage. Now, I talked about the outbreaking routes. Well, now watch the slot corner, Taron Johnson, and watch Tremaine Edmunds, his release. So now they're pattern matching these 2 guys right here, Gronk and Godwin. So they're squeezing the route by Gronk. And as Gronk gets into the route over here, that bender route over the middle, Godwin comes across the middle. Now what Tremaine Edmunds has to do, he's playing this high to low. Again, that's what the Bills defense, that's what they do. They play high to low. So Tremaine Edmunds pass Gronk on, and as Godwin gets over the middle, he breaks and makes the tackle. So these are plays that are being charged to Tremaine Edmunds, but really he's kind of just doing his job. And it's really, it sucks, but that's the scheme, right, Kendall?
Yeah, this is probably one where he got dinged a lot on PFF because this is what I don't know the down, but it's 3 yards till a first down, and he surrenders a first down on this play. And in all honesty, if I'm charting this for SIS, I'm giving this as Edmunds as the primary defender. He's right there, but he's also doing his job by rerouting Gronk to make sure there's time for the safety to get over onto that bender route. You can see he reroutes him outside of that hash to give his safety some time to get over there, but he's also right there to make the play and mitigate some yards after the catch from Chris Godwin. So you cannot discount that despite letting up the first down because he did do his 111th on that play.
And this is, Anthony, this is one of their base coverages. This is their quarters coverage look. And now they tweaked it about halfway through the season where on the backside of these formations, they were running man-to-man to the top of the screen, as you see there. But again, same type of release, 2 in-breaking routes. They're banjo coverage. So you see Edmunds and Johnson get depth there. And then as Godwin comes across the middle, Tremaine Edmunds on this play is a little late. He should be getting leverage across the field. And I think we'll see it from the end zone angle a little better. You want to see him leverage horizontally with Godwin a little more. But again, this one is really on Edmunds, but shows you how how offenses attack this banjo coverage. Again, a base coverage in the Bills scheme.
That's a huge piece of it too. Like I think a lot of times when you're focusing on your individual team, you're only focusing on like them failing or succeeding. And there's not enough talked about your opponent and the fact that they're also professionals and what they're trying to do. And both of those Buccaneers clips, those are good called plays executed by good players, and they're designed to put Tremaine Edmunds in conflict. And he's kind of, again, this isn't giving him a pass, but he's kind of in that damned if you do, damned if you don't. Okay, cool. Does he carry Gronk and reroute him? Okay, he gives up the throw underneath to Chris Godwin. Does he jump the Godwin route early? Okay, cool. He gets hit by Gronk behind and he gives up a bigger play, which is never going to happen ideally, because again, this is a keep everything in front of you, bend but don't break defense. So they're not going to give up that big splash play, but they're going to give up a bunch of little surgical things underneath you because they're playing the odds and they're playing that bend but don't break style. So he's in conflict so much, whether it's in the run or in the pass, like we're showing here, where again, nobody's giving him a pass, but he's in these lose-lose scenarios based on his position and based on the role and scheme of the defense.
Yeah, and you saw that clip in the Patriots game. You see it in this Chiefs game at the end of the first half. Again, he's doing his job here. It's surrendered to Hill, but he leverages him good enough to keep him going east and west, and forces that guy to get out of bounds there. But it's a minimal gain. And honestly, these are all passes that are charged to Tremaine Edmunds when really, again, they're giving him that. As Anthony said, if Edmunds were, and this is what they wanted, they want him to come downhill more to open up Proehl. Open up Proehl at that next level. But Tremaine Edmunds, again, he plays it, soft, but that's what he's supposed to do. And he's supposed to just leverage. He's supposed to use that range. And a lot of time, the other thing that's not talked about enough is, on the front side of this play, Milano, as in the prior clips, is in, man coverage, pretty much widening out there. So there's a lot of green for Edmunds to carry. And that's why his athleticism, his speed, his range does come in hand when we're talking about these type of pattern matching coverages.
Yeah, 100%. He's definitely undervalued for that reason, because he's not making those stat sheet stuffing plays. But there are plays like this where he's doing his job. He's doing his job, guys. And really, at the end of the day, I think the key stat where this is why I wish that screen to Gibson wasn't charted the way it was. That's one where I think him and his ability to mitigate yards after the catch is probably the area that you want to hone in on most for criticism, or where you assign him value, because that's really what his job is in coverage. It's to rally to the ball carrier and make that tackle as quickly as possible, because like we've said plenty of times, he's processing high to low. So when that low pass is completed, you want to make sure you're making that tackle early and not allowing yards after the catch.
And for those people that said that, you want to see more physicality from Edmunds, I thought that we saw that this year. Now, is it to the potential that he can be with his size? No. But we saw him lay the lick, and you saw a couple of these Patriots plays where, again, he's pattern matching with the tight end and Jacoby Myers there, and him and Johnson are working that pattern match. Tight end gets vertical. Now he hones in on the crosser. He goes
Erik,
downhill.
real quick, the film screen isn't sharing.
It's not sharing anymore?
I got it.
There you go. There we go.
All right. And so you see it here. Like, you see him, again, pattern match. And as the tight end gets vertical, here comes Myers across the middle. And he's able to minimize that gain, something that we see time and time again. I mean, it's just now the Bills defense isn't super complex when we're talking about coverages. They just do their coverages really, really well. A lot of it's based in game plan. Well, the other team gets paid too. And you're going to see some of these next clips and how they didn't necessarily take advantage of Edmunds, but they took advantage of the scheme and Leslie Frazier's scheme, which is why we want to see him kind of mix it up a little more. So you're going to see Evans get hit down the middle from that bunch set, but it's literally the same coverage we've been breaking down. Edmunds and Johnson are watching the option route by Godwin. He breaks inside. So does Evans over the middle. So these two guys, Johnson, Edmunds, jump. Godwin, well, guess what? Now you have Evans wide open over the middle, and the safeties are occupied. They have to stay back, especially Proehl, who normally be a little lower to break on this right here. He's got to stay a little higher because they got Gronk running that deep corner. So this is the Buccaneers, again, a team obviously paid to beat this type of coverage and have the weapons to push it down the field. This is really them, Anthony, taking advantage of the scheme, not necessarily Tremaine Edmunds.
That's exactly right. When you play, again, I don't want to say vanilla because I feel like that's a negative connotation and an insult to a degree. But when you play these more vanilla types of coverages, teams can anticipate that and design plays to attack those coverages that they anticipate are coming. And the Bills, to their credit, they also know that they're just so well coached and they're so good at communicating and playing within the scheme that most of the time, legitimately, most of the time, that's why they were the number one defense in terms of DVOA. They're able to communicate and pattern match, and they have little intricacies and games built into their vanilla coverages. But you will have times, where teams are able to take advantage of that type of defense, the same way they used to see the Tampa 2. Every once in a while, somebody hits that honey hole shot on a smash concept, and it's like, well, tip your hat. They beat the coverage. It is what it is. Put your helmet on. Let's get after it the next play. You're going to get beat from time to time. The key is, and that's what our whole thing is, right? Even us, I think we study our asses off. We watch a lot. We read a lot. Even we don't know exactly what everyone's responsibility is on any given play. And that's, I think, what we're trying to communicate with a lot of this Edmunds talk is so much like that previous Buccaneers play. There's a completion in the middle of the field, and I think somebody sees like, well, why wasn't Edmunds in there? That's his zone. He's the middle linebacker. He's got to make that play. But that's not really on him. It has to do with the scheme, and you're going to credit and blame him for that. But the blame doesn't necessarily lie with him. Could he make an amazing play and make a stop? Of course. But, if the bear didn't stop to take a crap in the woods, he would have caught the rabbit. That's not a fair thing. Like, you have to understand the larger scheme and the larger game at play.
Yeah, and Kendall, I want you to talk about this play. So same coverage, and you're going to see Kelce sneak across the field right here on the bender route. So instead of sending that shallow drag, they sneak Kelce behind the second level, and you see Hill to the bottom of the screen. He's matched up with a corner and man coverage. Obviously, the safety to his side, he's got to stay deep. He can't come down on Kelce coming over the middle. And so this does fall on Edmunds, but it's a lot of green, given the fact that, again, Milano is a man coverage. He's vacating out here to the bottom. And, you'd like to see Edmunds have his head, on a swivel, turn around, and being talked about this, turn around, find a target.
Yes.
Even though there is a lot of green to cover. But again, you can see some of the scheme issue here, and also how much stress they're putting on Tremaine Edmunds here. And then add in Patrick Mahomes essentially throwing a no-look pass, because when you look at it from the end zone angle, he's kind of looking this way. His body's looking that way, and his posture's looking that way, and the ball obviously ends up going down here. So talk about that. And the stress, again, it's something that we've talked about in this breakdown, is how much stress they put on Tremaine Edmunds.
Do you have the end zone angle for this play?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, because this play is the play I use when I explain we don't give enough credit to our opponents when they make good plays. Because Edmunds, like you said, is put under so much conflict on this play. Yes, I'd like to see him get more width on this as he sees Kelce kind of open up a little bit towards the inside and try to get behind him on the deep over. I'd like to see him be better on that. Like you said, get the head on the swivel, find your target, because you have the athleticism to go play man in that moment. Find your target and smother yourself all over them, because I think Edmunds has the ability to do that at that point. But I think that's an area I think that's his biggest area to improve in coverage. It's his ability to have awareness for those crossers going on behind him, and his ability to find them, identify them, and take them away. And maybe that is somewhat because of scheme, because you don't want to play so decisively taking away one target, because it could decisively open up another target. But on that play specifically, he's put in so much conflict, and you really have to give a lot of credit to Mahomes and Kelce on that one, because that ball was thrown before Kelce was even.
That's a hell of a throw.
Yeah.
He wasn't even with Edmunds, and he made the throw. So you got to give credit to your opponents sometime.
Right. And Anthony, here's another banjo coverage between Tremaine Edmunds, Taron Johnson. So you see the route concept here. Look where Edmunds is. He's passing the vertical route by the tight end. He's like, okay, that guy's going past me. I need to get my eyes on the next threat, the next target. And watch what happens here. The little exchange between Edmunds and Taron Johnson. So as the receiver curls up in front of Taron Johnson, you're going to see Taron Johnson hinge and get back to cover this out route from the tight end. And then you see the cover down, the plaster from Tremaine Edmunds. Again, this is a play that the quarterback's looking to throw it probably right here. He's looking right there. And Edmunds, Johnson take it away, and he ends up scrambling. So this is not one, those plays where you're giving credit to Tremaine, Edmunds, or even a Taron Johnson on this play because it's zone coverage. It's a banjo zone coverage, but nonetheless, this is where the quarterback wanted to go with the ball. He's not able to and ends up scrambling for possibly the first down there.
And this is part of that coverage piece, right? Forget about the scramble for an instance. Think about how, again, we mentioned the vanilla type thing with the Bills defense, right? But think about how complex what you have to do. Taron Johnson and Tremaine Edmunds both have to read the same thing at roughly the same time to be able to pass this off properly and execute the way that they're supposed to. If Taron reads the wrong thing, what happens if Taron and Tremaine both sit on the hitch? Then the tight end is wide open behind, which I believe actually happens in this game on another play.
It's earlier in the game. This is actually the second play that I showed on Twitter. Yep.
So imagine if Taron doesn't drop back, that route's open. Or imagine if Tremaine miscommunicates and he carries the tight end too far up the field. Myers can just hitch and go into the middle of the field a little more, and Mac Jones can lead him and he can get a completion. So you have so many communication pieces, and everybody has to be on the same page and see the same thing at the right time. And then in this instance, they did all that in coverage. Great job. That's a win in coverage. But then you don't have proper rush lane integrity. And then because you executed in coverage and you went with your guys, there's a huge gaping, area to run in, and Mac Jones finds some space. And that's where, again, you're almost damned if you do, damned if you don't. You execute well, but you still get beat. Sometimes, again, you just got to tip your hat or try and coach up other areas. But it's hard to correct for everything and win at everything all the time.
Yeah, and Kendall, I know this is one of your favorite plays. This one's against the Buccaneers and Bills. Again, pattern matching, but they're executing it's called a clamp. So it's basically they're worried about Gronk and they want to eliminate him. So they're matching off of his route. And watch how Taron Johnson, prior to the snap, backs off because he's pattern matching Gronk here. And they're reading those guys. And you can see, as I talked about earlier, if these guys break out, they're going to trap. And that's what the Bucs show here. So you see Gronk look like he's running the out route, but he's actually running a jerk route. So you see him look like he's breaking out. Taron Johnson wants to break. He's communicating it to the safety on the back end there. So Edmunds says, okay, that's not my guy. I need to get my eyes over the middle. Here comes that guy over the middle. So continuity in this coverage, continuity in this defense. And you see them both clamp down. So you see Edmunds clamp on that. But Gronk bends it back up the field. And so now you see Jordan Poyer have to make a play down the field. But again, Edmunds is there. He's doing his job. He's being consistent. He's pattern matching, something that a lot of people didn't believe he could do out of college at Virginia Tech. But he does a good job of it here. The Bucs have a good play call to go against it. So it kind of gives you an idea that they had an idea what type of coverage they were going to see from Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott. But players make plays. You see Jordan Poyer make a play on the back end there, Kendall. So what do you love about this play, brother?
To me, this play, the reason I love this play is because there were so many times where I felt like Edmunds was getting beat on these drag routes. He was allowing these easy completions in front of him to go for too many yards after the catch. Like I said, I'm aware that it's, process high to low. You're going to allow those easy drag routes, but you got to play in front of it enough to make the tackle and mitigate the gain. And on this play, he identifies the drag from Tyler Johnson, number 18, so early. He's looking through Gronk at the moment. He's trying to sell that stick nod route. He's looking through his body. He identifies the drag. He takes it away. You can see Tom Brady pump fake because he doesn't have anyone open, and he just has to go to the beater for this play, which is Gronk running up the seam essentially to beat Poyer. But like you said, I mean, good players make good plays, and because everyone was doing their job, Poyer was able to show his athleticism and make a play.
Yeah, and so I know, we're going deep into the weeds in coverages, but I wanted to show you that, the Bills played a lot of zone coverage, but it was a lot of pattern matching coverages and a lot of coverages that based on the formation, Tremaine Edmunds had to get them into that coverage. And then again, read usually 2-1 or 3-2, depending on the coverage. It's just something that falls by the wayside on the broadcast because you don't see these type of angles and this type of analysis live and in, as the bullets are flying. But it's something that it's the context that we need to add to some of the reception surrendered stats and stuff like that from these companies, again, companies that we fully invest in a lot of money when we're talking about statistic memberships. But there are still flaws to the system, and some systems are better than the other. With that said, 2 hours, guys. We ended with a bang with Tremaine Edmunds. Hopefully you guys
best linebacker in
that.
the league.
Don't put that out there.
Yeah, I know, dude. Someone's gonna cut that and then
Sorry,
share it on Twitter.
Worst linebacker.
You see
in
the
league.
handle. You see the handle there. Make sure to @ him when you do cut it up, guys. No, the chat room was great. You guys are great. Thanks for tuning in. If you missed part of the show, go back onto the channel and dive back in and watch it in segments. Again, 2 hours is a long time. We understand that, but we wanted to touch on the entire class of the Bills and obviously Brandon Beane's first draft class. With that said, Kendall, where can we find you on social media and this week as far as content goes?
So you can find me at my Twitter handle at Mursky Kendall. I'll be posting a bunch of random clips from draft prospects that I'm interested in. I'm kind of jumping from position to position at the moment, which probably isn't the smartest thing to do, but I'll figure out the organization of it eventually. No, but you can find me content creation wise every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Monday and Thursdays on the Air Raid Hour. And then, of course, Tuesdays here in the film room. So hope you guys enjoyed and happy to provide.
Anthony, Mr. Workhorse, what you got going on this week, brother?
Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro 2 underscores ANT. I've been doing a lot of college scouting and position breakdowns. I'm on wide receivers right now. I posted 3 wide receiver threads today that I feel like people didn't care about, which is disappointing because I spent a lot of time on it.
About it.
Give it time. Give it time.
You find me doing that on the old Twitter. You find me here every week on the film room, and then find me as the host of Disguise Coverage live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Got a bit of a super show going tomorrow with Mr. Aaron Quinn returning, Mr. Anthony Romeo returning, and then Mr. Steve
between
Mathis.
2 Anthonys.
Yeah, between 2 Anthonys with a little Steve Mathis added in. We're going to be looking at the Buffalo Bills defense, going through each position, grouping on the Bills defense and addressing priority needs and how to attack those needs this offseason. And yeah, that's me. And I'm a Gemini. I like moonlit walks on the beach. I'm a big cocktail guy. Daiquiris, Miami Vices. Not so much pina coladas, but in a Miami Vice with a daiquiri I'll take, and whiskey sours. And yeah, that's me.
All right, guys. Again, thanks for joining us in the film room. That's the crew. Make sure to get to the Cover One YouTube channel. Make sure to follow the guys at their handles as you see on the screen. And I'm Erik Turner, host of the film room. We'll see you next week.